Hi folks, CodeTutor here and my name is Anil Deshpande. Hi folks, welcome to another video on Android unit testing series. In the previous video, we have seen how we test a repository, and we had this country repository and it had a data source which was a country DAO, that is country data access object. And when we tested it, we tested that repository with that particular country DAO. But do you think your repository with DAO alone is sufficient? Let's find out today. So if you just go back to the country DAO, this is what the country DAO is. It has a get all function, and what it does is it returns all the data, that is a list of countries, locally from the device. Maybe it is backed up with a room database which contains all the list of countries. And while testing, that is country repository test, you can see that we created a fake country DAO, which is a constant list of countries. It is like a seed value for the DAO against which you want to test your repository. One of the way of testing is using a fake, and we also saw there was a stub also that we did. That is, if I just search for stub, there is a stub country DAO. We could have used this as well. And we have seen all of this in the previous video. But is this a realistic scenario wherein your country repository, which relies on a country DAO, which means repository always sends data from the local DAO, is this a realistic for real world application? More often than not, your data is not always local to your device. Most likely you have data somewhere remotely on a server, and you want to basically fetch that particular data from the remote server through some kind of a API invocation and then cache it locally. So whatever that we have so far is not realistic, and we need to have something more robust, and let us see how it can be done. So what I will do is, let me create a service under the repository. Let me call it as interface country service, and this country service will contain a suspend function called fetch all, and that returns a list of countries. You might be wondering why a interface? Well, because it offers more flexibility and it would be easy to test later. And what kind of data would this provide? It would be an API data from a remote server, wherever that it might be hosted. Now, because we have this country service which is going to fetch the country list from the remote server, the existing current implementation of the DAO would not be sufficient, which only has get all. So once we fetch all the country list, we need to insert it into the backed up database, so that once all insertion is done, then the get all will return it from the local database. So it would be good to have another suspend function along with get all, which is insert all. So suspend function insert all, which inserts countries, which is list of country. So it will insert all the country list into the database, whatever that this function returns. So this basically allows you to implement the caching mechanism. So now let's go back to the country repository and refactor the get all. First thing that we will have to modify is pass another parameter, that is private val service, which will be a country service, that is this one. And then inside the get all, let me create a local variable which will be initialized with the data source, that is country DAO dot get all. So I am basically fetching all the data from the local data source. If local dot is not empty, then return local. You are basically ensuring that you are always sending the data from the local. And then else val remote is equal to service dot fetch all. This is where I am fetching it from the remote server. And then data source dot insert all remote. I am now inserting all the remote values that I got from the API into the local database, and then return remote. Let's quickly recap what we have done so far. We introduce another new country service which helps us to fetch the data remotely from the server. We updated the country DAO so that we can do the insert of all the countries into the cache. And then we updated the country repository by passing another parameter along with country DAO, which is CountryService. And in the get all, what we are doing is initially we try to get it from the local source. Otherwise, it basically means the data is not available locally. In that case, we fetch the data from the remote, then insert it, and then we ensure that we send that data. We have implemented it, but what happens if our service fails unexpectedly? How do we handle the errors gracefully? So in the next video, we will write the test cases to test these scenarios thoroughly and make sure that our app is resilient for those kinds of scenarios. So in the next video, you will see how we want to test these. That brings us to the end of this particular video. Don't forget to like, comment, share the video and subscribe to the channel. Take care. Bye.